So why CollabREate? Okay, it started out because I couldn't spell, and I thought that's pretty cool. There's this ER in CollabREate, and if I turn that around, that's RE, and RE's fun. And then Tim reminded me that it's CollabREate, OR, and so now we're stuck with it, and that's the historical reasons for the bad name. But the goal is it's basically very much inspired by Pedram Amini's Idasync tool, if anybody's ever heard of it and or tried to use it, and founded on the fact that reverse engineering binaries can be a very complex, time-consuming task, and working in large groups, it's nice to get a lot of eyes on the same binary and share the information that people are deriving as they work their way through the binary. In the past, prior to Idasync, that was basically you could either share databases in a serial fashion. I do some work, I give it to you, you do some work, things quickly diverge, and we can get together with our laptops next to one another and bring comments over or devise interesting ways to export portions of the database using various scripting techniques. But Pedram took a great step forward when he came up with the notion of, well, let's build a server. Let's see if we can't hack some asynchronous networking code into IDA via its plugin architecture. And let's push some of the commands and the updates that people are making in the database out to that server where they can be cached and shared among several reverse engineers working on the same binary. Another problem that we were interested in overcoming was the fact that we deal with people using various different versions of IDA, so it becomes much more difficult to share databases in that case. I have many starving students working for me who are very much tied to and appreciative of the freeware version of IDA, and that is not always capable of opening all databases. Newer versions of IDA have a database format that's not backwards compatible. So anything I create, I can't just push out to share with my students. And as we went along the way, we considered ways that we'd like to improve on Idasync. And basically, it's a ground-up implementation of Idasync-like ideas that doesn't borrow on Idasync code too much. So the overall goals of the project are to provide a way to capture state changes that people make to their databases. And it's not to bring everybody onto one machine working on one database. So the state changes are captured in one version of our server in a SQL database, stored according to project that you happen to be working on, which is very much tied to the input file via MD5 sum matching. And these updates are tagged based on user login credentials, so we can track updates to users. And then anybody else who joins the project can automatically receive all the updates that have been made, more or less bringing their database, very much a separate database, into a state that nearly mirrors, hopefully fully mirrors, the state of the original database or all of the databases that are sharing on the project. We wanted to be able to allow people to migrate in and out of the project at will and not be tied to sort of one mass reversing session. Let's descend on a table, let's all jack in, let's fire up the server, share, ready, break, and then everybody goes and has their databases diverge wildly in format. So again, the idea is you can walk away, come back, and get everything you missed. You can you can join in 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 months later, and pick up all the changes that have made since the creation of the initial project. We also figured there are many times in reversing where you're working your way down a path in a binary. Maybe you need to manipulate the binary in some way, transform it somehow, and you that makes you pause and wonder, well, I could really screw this up. So I may like a way to either back out of my changes, have some sort of save point. And the idea here was that we wanted to leverage the capabilities of the CollabREate server to take a step towards save pointing, checkpointing projects. So the idea with a simple checkpoint is just a bookmark into the current database that we're maintaining of changes, and you can come back, discard all your previous changes, connect to a project, and accept databases up to your last save point. So while it's not a rollback, it's kind of a replay to current state. Right now, we don't have a way to capture sufficient amount of information to do true undo capability, but we hope that at some point, as the IDA API evolves in the SDK, that we can capture more state information and be able to do kind of incremental undos, leveraging the information that's been stored on the server. Along with the checkpoint notion was, well, how about forking a project? So you decide you'd like to go down two different paths, perhaps, and we wanted the capability to just have a group go off and work on one path, creating an entirely separate project, while some may choose to stay in an original project. So there's a forking capability which actually creates an entirely separate project that are parallel to a point, but then are allowed to diverge down different paths. So you could come in and rejoin it up to any of the fork points, follow any of the fork points, and so on. So the basic idea to get this implemented, first of all, if you're not familiar with IDA Sync, the way they chose to implement that was to add a variety of hotkeys via IDA's plugin architecture, and the hotkeys would be additional ways to perform some IDA actions. For example, a new hotkey sequence was added to add a IDA Sync specific style of comment, and if you chose to insert an IDA Sync style comment, then the plugin would push that comment out to the server. But it was very much a notion of I have extra hotkeys to learn now, and I have to remember to use those hotkeys in order to share my changes. So if I insert a normal comment, then everybody doesn't see it. I have to remember, oh, people are complaining, I don't see it, so yeah, okay. IDA Sync comment, alternate hotkey sequence, and away it goes. So you're limited in the number of actions that you could share based on the number of implemented hotkey sequences and associated actions. The installation was somewhat more complex because it required you to come in and tailor your IDA plugins configuration file to actually map all the new hotkey sequences into the IDA Sync plugin. There were some other, we actually looked on with a great desire of using their networking code, and as we started using some of their networking code, we realized that the number of changes that we were pushing far outstripped the capability of that bit of networking code. So we basically rewrote the asynchronous networking piece from scratch, and I think we've come up with a pretty robust solution that is easily stripped out of IDA Sync, or CollabREate. I did not rip it out of IDA Sync entirely. Easily stripped out of CollabREate and taken into any other project that you may wish to do asynchronous communications with. The users unfamiliar with IDA may not know that IDA is pretty much single-threaded. You don't start separate threads of execution in IDA because IDA performs no locking mechanisms around its internal database accesses. And because it's single-threaded, in addition to the locking problem, you don't want to perform any blocking operations in your plugins. Otherwise, IDA just kind of sits and waits for stuff to happen until your plugin is completed and returned control back to IDA. So the asynchronous communications are pretty much essential if you just don't want to stare at a frozen screen. So our implementation instead leverages the capabilities of IDA's software development kit and the API architecture, which allows you to register your interest in various IDA events that are generated or fired off in response to user actions. So these events are triggered automatically in association with user actions such as adding comments or renaming functions or undefining bytes or reformatting portions of the database. And this seemed like a much more natural way to capture what was going on as the database was manipulated by the user. So we decided we would register for virtually everything, take the information that was forwarded to us with each notification, and push a sufficient amount of that information over to a server where users tied to the same project could receive them via the server's kind of mirroring publishing architecture. That's how the server behaves. In fact, it just mirrors all received packets out to any connected users while caching packets, or datagrams as we call them, for anybody who may connect to the project in the future. Asynchronous comms, I guess I kind of get out of order, and that's the nature of my talks. I apologize. And so this pretty much summarizes stuff that I've already said. The limitations that we're dealing with are primarily forced on us by the manner in which IDA, being a primarily GUI application on the Windows architecture, runs its Windows message processing loop. So we've basically got to get tied into that loop. And the way to do that, in this case, is through the use of Windows asynchronous sockets, which advertise various network events in the form of Windows messages received through the message queue. Some of the things that we dealt with as we developed this and worked our way through the IDA API were, and especially as we thought about the undo capability, there are no pre-notifications. IDA certainly knows it's about to rename an address, but it doesn't tell you that it's about to rename an address. You are notified only that the address has been renamed. So if we had pre-notification events, we could capture the current name of an address and capture the new name of an address, and then we would actually be capturing sufficient information to start providing a rollback capability. Since we're notified after the fact of all changes, it's very difficult to know exactly what we would roll back to. We've thought about some techniques for leveraging a second kind of dummy copy of IDA on a given project, and that copy of IDA would generate no updates because there's no user associated with it, but receiving all updates would choose to capture its current state prior to applying an update, and we could use that copy of IDA to generate a sufficient amount of information to provide for some sort of rollback capability. Again, in addition to that limitation, we ran across the occasional bug here and there and the occasional missing feature here and there, and received, I can't thank them enough, tremendous support from ILFAC. For those who've ever dealt with IDA support, it's pretty instantaneous turnaround on most reasonable requests. So we actually made changes to the API and fixed some bugs in near instantaneous time, which allowed us to make continued forward progress on the project. So the user interface to this thing is we tried to keep it pretty slim. We didn't want to keep popping dialog boxes all the time because that's clearly pretty annoying. So we just went ahead and built our own dialog boxes outside of IDA, even though IDA provides some limited capability of building basically format string based GUI components. We didn't have quite the flexibility we wanted, so we used custom Windows dialog boxes. If you've ever considered doing that in IDA plugins or never and not done it, then perhaps this code will serve as an example to help you customize your plugins in that direction. The biggest reason that drove us to that was IDA's text fields don't offer password hiding. So for that reason alone, we wanted to use native Windows controls and be able to obscure passwords as they were being entered. Okay. This kind of sums up a lot of the stuff that we just came to our minds as we were developing the plugin. As we started caching these things on a database, every update's tied to both a project and a user, and then it occurred to us that maybe we want to be able to manage these databases somehow, which is in interesting ways, since we can now turn this into a SQL kind of manipulation problem with all the changes that are sitting there stored on the server. Project forking was one of the early things that came up. Checkpoint said, hey, that's pretty cool. We can just add a table and point at the last update, give it a pseudonym, and have a very lightweight project, if you will. We are very interested in fact, it's just about off the table, looking at migrating projects from one server to another, so as a quick SQL dump, export from one server, import to another server. And so we've tried to build in the mechanisms to allow you to do that and deconflict your projects from one server to another. And leave them with some sort of global identification capability across various servers. And that way, again, instead of shipping your databases and worrying about what versions of IDA folks may have or may not have, you can say, well, fire up CollabREate, do a project dump, capture all the changes that you've already done, and just join the project. Okay, bring your version of 5.0 up to date with the stuff that we generated on 5.3 or what have you. One we keep kicking back and forth, and we're just not sure where to go with this, is the ability to work offline. Sort of, okay, I'm tied to a project, and I'm going to be traveling, whatnot, and away from the network connection for a while. Am I limited? Can I make any changes, or do I really need to wait till I'm tied back to that server? So this was a tough one because we're not trying to be CVS. Okay, we're not trying to generate all kind of conflict resolutions on merges and things like that. It's very much of a last update wins kind of thing. So if we're patching bytes on top of one another, whoever makes the last update kind of wins. And for the time being, we're of the mind that if you're away from the project and not seeing updates that some folks are making, then you may not be influenced by their changes. They may not be influenced by your changes, so you don't get to make changes. Actually, you can make changes. Being joined to a project doesn't prevent you from just disconnecting from the project and just going down your own path. You just probably don't want to rejoin the project because you made a lot of changes that won't be shared. If you think you want to rejoin at some point, you can always set a save point before you walk away, and then you'll be able to roll right back up to where everybody happens to be. But they won't get your changes at the present time. And then we thought about, well, okay, I'm a teacher. I work with lots of students, and I'd love to do this so I can kind of drive their IDA displays as I'm working my way through a database and say, we go down here and reformat code here. We'll throw in some comments here. And while I'm doing all this, please don't bork my database. Okay, so I really don't necessarily want them publishing changes out to me. So I want to make them perhaps read-only subscribers in this environment, or prohibit them from making some of the more dangerous types of updates. So we started looking at, well, can we categorize the types of permissions, types of updates that are being made, and split them out into various publish and subscribe permissions. So we tried to offer a granular sort of subscription capability. You can subscribe to comments only, or you can subscribe and publish comments and name changes. There's a variety of categories. We're not going to run down through them, but you'll see various slides that point to that. Talked a little bit about why undo is difficult, so I'm going to kind of blow through this slide. Basically, we're just not getting enough information pushed out of the database that's generating the change event in order to be able to roll back to its previous state. And more on why working offline is difficult. Again, what we don't want to be doing is popping conflict resolution dialog boxes all over the place and making you work it out, because it hinders your progress through the database to be dealing with pop-up dialogues all the time. Okay, how are we doing? So basically the plugin, again, lots of repeat here, but the plugin just registers itself for all interesting notifications. We prefer to trigger the plugin after IDA's initial auto-analysis phase, because IDA is making massive changes to its database, generating a massive number of updates during that auto-analysis phase. We had played around with disabling auto-analysis, having everybody fire up with nothing analyzed, and then having a master database, perhaps the latest and greatest version of IDA with super plugins for analysis, do all of the analysis, and that got kind of hairy. So we just decided that, well, whatever version of IDA you're in, the initial auto-analysis that you get from that version of IDA is kind of close enough. So we highly recommend you join after that's done. We tried to minimize the amount of state being saved in the plugin. Things we do save are kind of just your last server that you might have been connected to. We save a global project ID so that we can streamline reconnection once you've joined a project, and so on. And then the plugin's only job is to capture your events and package them up and ship them off to a server, and then process incoming events that it may receive from other users. So the operation, we do introduce one new hotkey that triggers the plugin, and that's pretty much the extent of our intrusion into your IDA experience. So you can take the binary plugin, drop it into your IDA plugins directory. At the current time, I recommend not renaming it from what it names. It's named by default. That actually breaks the plugin for reasons that we could probably fix but haven't. And then it's just capturing all actions. You trigger the plugin, it asks you to join a project, and then it's kind of hands off. So there's no, oops, I forgot to push an update. It's just done for you. You get various notifications. If you drop your network connection, you drop your connection to the server, you do get a pop-up that warns you, hey, you've lost your connection to the server. Consider reconnecting before you generate any more changes. Otherwise, beware that you're diverging from the rest of the project. So we try to be useful to all users of IDA. Versions are available, and the plugin compiles easily for versions of IDA from 4.9 up through 5.3. The slides came out before 5.3 did. And it also compiles, or if you have an SDK for the freeware, but we provide a binary for the freeware version as well. Build scripts are made available for G++ and Visual Studio. You have to build a plugin for your specific version of IDA. We do some very version-specific things as the versions become more capable. So there are some header files in there that have actually checked through and determined exactly which version of IDA you happen to be using, and we try to use the right features for your particular version. Again, as the SDKs evolved, more notification messages are being generated by IDA. So newer versions of IDA and their corresponding versions of the plugin are capable of generating more types of events, capturing more of the changes that you make to the database. Older versions of IDA, like 4.9, 5.0, actually are not nearly as capable in regards to publishing, but every version of the plugin can receive and process every type of update. So while as a 4.9 user, your changes may not be pushed to everybody as often as you like, but you will receive every type of update that, say, a 5.3 user makes, even though you cannot make those same updates yourself. This is a breakdown. It probably looks better on the slide deck of capabilities by version. And you can see it's kind of split up into publish and subscribe sides. The publish capabilities improve as you improve IDA versions, but the subscribe capabilities are consistent across all versions of IDA. And so, you ready? This is Tim's slide.
Just another quick reminder for everybody that came in late or has been moving around. If you want to participate in the demo, the information's over here on the left-hand screen. That's not going at the same time. So there's all your connection information for the local wireless, the auth information, and the server to connect to. And to be able to see both simultaneously during the demo, you might want to migrate towards the middle, which is why the middle is more dense. So. All right, so this slide talks a little bit about the CollabREate protocol on the network. We chose to do a binary protocol instead of like an ASCII or an XML-based protocol per se, because a lot of the messages that are generated have binary content, and we didn't want to have to waste a lot of time unpackaging and converting to XML and sending it across the network, and then repackaging and how you store it, and you have to do that for every plugin, and the server has to generate it. So whatever, we'll just leave it as binary. We just have a datagram size that comes ahead, tells you how much more data is coming, and then we have two different types of messages that can go. One is basically destined only for the CollabREate specific software, so it's how the plugin communicates directly with the server. So we've added those messages unique for the CollabREate software. The other ones are due to the updates, the notifications that Chris was talking about that IDA generates. So we'll have different types of notifications that are generated when you rename a function or add a comment or make a structure, update a structure, or whatever. All of those things go into the other type of comment, and those are broadcast from the plugin to the server. The server mirrors them to all currently connected clients, and then if we're in a database mode for the server, it's also going to archive it in the SQL database. So the server maintains all the state. A lot of you guys know the advantages of that just by the conference that you're attending. So we want to leave all of these decisions to be up to the user. So the plugin has the auth components so that you can authenticate to the server and you can connect to the server, but all of the important decisions are made on the server, which potentially you're supposed to trust more. So the server can be invoked in 2 different modes. The database mode, which is the one that we'll demo here today, and it's by far the most feature-rich version. There's also a basic mode if you wanted to collaborate with some people, say in an environment like this, and you didn't bring a SQL database with you and you didn't want to connect out on the internet. You could pull up the server quickly using your JVM, and you could all connect to the project at the same time, and it will do the mirroring, but it won't do any of the archiving, right? So a little bit more on that. The server requires Java. We tested it on JDK 1.6. There's the 2 modes, simple reflector. For the database mode, we're going to need the Java connection software so that Java can talk to the database. And that's going to allow for the persistent storage. It's available in all different kinds of ways. The plugins, of course, are available right now. You can grab them off of the various websites or the local website that we have running here. The server will be available starting tomorrow. We didn't release it for certain reasons until just now. And that'll be available in source. And it'll also be available in a jar if you didn't want to have to deal with the source. And it's also available as a, whatever it's called, a VMware virtual appliance on the VMware site. So you can literally just start it up and connect to it. Right. So basic mode requires no database. It still allows multiple projects, so you can have all kinds of different teams working on various RE projects that require more than one set of eyes. And they just won't be stored, right? No persistent storage. Also, kind of as a side effect, that you have no authentication for these kind of things. Where would the auth information come from? They're not storing it in the database. You have to do a flat file. It gets more confusing. You have to diverge. You have to develop a lot more. So really, it's a very simple thing. You just quickly throw up and allow you to collaborate for a certain amount of time and then lose your changes. The basic mode doesn't save any information in the IDB. It doesn't have to because it assumes that you're not going to have any persistent storage, so you're not going to be reconnecting to a project later. So all participants have to start at the same time, and as you stop, you probably shouldn't come back to the project because your updates will not be in sync with anybody else that's doing it. So the database mode, we had a request during development to add MySQL support. So in addition to Postgres, it supports MySQL. Postgres, it's going to require 8.2 or higher. It's probably not a big deal because 8.2 and 8.3 have been out for a little while. That's just due to the nature of some of the ways that we have formed the SQL statements. So if somebody is more interested in that we are than going and making some more functions, it'll probably work with older versions just fine. So this requires authentication. Basic RFCs for CHAP and Mac, that's good enough. We assume you're probably going to be running these on some sort of internal, more safe network anyway. So as Chris pointed out, all participants start by running the auto-analysis in their plugin, or in their specific version of IDA, and then launching the plugin and connecting. As Chris pointed out again, the auto-analysis might be a little different. It might vary based on the particular version of IDA. However, in practice, we've noticed that they get really close and just fine for the type of stuff that we're doing anyway. So all updates that are posted to the project from any user that's been collaborating in that project are archived in the database. When a new user connects, if they join that same project, they get all the updates up to point. So it's really easy to bring somebody else's IDB all the way back up to speed with what everybody else has been working on, regardless of their version of IDA. To facilitate kind of joining and disjoining or leaving a project, we store a little bit of information in the IDA database. So this is not the SQL database. This is the IDA file, the database that stores your binary content. That information facilitates quickly reconnecting back to the database, remembering which project you joined to so that you automatically join the same project. If we allowed you to join a different project, they would most definitely be out of sync, so to speak, and the updates wouldn't go across correctly. No offline work. Right, the plugin's available now. Server's available tomorrow. I already said that. Okay, so now I'm going to go through a quick overview of what some of the windows look like if you're on a XP or 2000 kind of a machine, and then we're going to get into the demo. So now you guys need to make sure you have your plugins installed and you can ping the server. And actually, it doesn't ping, does it? But you can trigger the plugin. You can connect to it. So get that stuff ready. Again, for the latecomers, there's a little bit of incentive for being the first one that makes an edit to the database that's visible on the screen to the rest of the attendees. So after you open the database and the auto-analysis finished, you want to activate the plugin with the hotkey Alt F6. You want to enter the connection information for the server, either via host or IP, and then the port, which defaults to 5042. Run it on whatever you want. Then you're going to authenticate. The IDA creates an MD5 hash of the binary that you've loaded, and that's used as a unique indicator of for the project to make sure that when other people join, they're going to get a list of projects that are only compatible with whatever binary they've loaded in IDA. Right? So that's just kind of the quick safety check that if I've loaded a binary and somebody else wants to collaborate with me, if they load a different binary, they're not going to like hammer me with the updates that don't make sense for my database. So then the units are managed by the server. You're going to enter your username, enter your auth information. This is the box that Chris spoke of where we wanted to mask the password. Couldn't do that with the SDK capability for IDA as far as we know. So used regular Windows graphics. So there's two cases when you join. One case is that you were already joined to a project previously and that information was stored in your IDB, in which case you're automatically reconnected to the same project and you automatically get any updates that anybody else has made to the database while you were offline. If you have never had a project for this particular IDA database, then you can choose to start a new project, or you can choose to join other projects if other ones have been made, and the MD5 is used as the uniqueness for that. All right, so here's a little example. We have now connected, and it shows that there's one project that somebody else has previously created. We know that it's not one that we probably made, because if we did, we would have automatically joined to it. Or this could be us using a second instance of IDA to have two computers going for whatever reason. So we can use the options button to look at permissions. These are the granularity of permissions that were present in, 5.2, right? The slides are a little bit dated. 5.3 is now out. But you can see that we can choose publish and subscribe permissions as we join the project. So another interesting thing we can do, Chris was talking about the scenario where we don't want novice users mucking up a database, but we want to drive it, and we want to drive it in a manner that they can scroll up and down in their own database and look at different areas, and they can even make changes. We just don't want those changes to reflect the things that we're doing up while we're instructing or whatever. So there's actually 3 sets of permissions. We can set a permission on a particular user account. It's a novice user. We don't want to let them do anything, so when they log in, they're limited on those permissions. When you connect the plugin and get this type of a graphic, then you can choose what kind of permissions you'd like for that particular session, and then you also set permissions on a per project basis. So all of those things are combined together to figure out whatever your effective permissions are going to be for that particular session. What's that? Okay, go ahead.
I'll add one thing that the permissions list that you see here is actually driven on the server side. The server publishes this list of permissions, and then this dialog box is populated. So if there's stuff you just don't ever want to do, you can trim it at the server without having to have everybody rebuild their plugins. And then you just get the tailored list of permissions published by the server.
Okay, then in our quest to remove hotkeys, so one of the particularly annoying things about the earlier projects that attempt to do this kind of thing, like IDA sync, are that you have to remember, consciously remember that there's different hotkeys to do different things. So there's a thing that looks a lot like an IDA comment, but it's really an IDA sync comment, and you have to use a different hotkey to get that window, and you have to remember to do that every time you make a comment that you want to share. So if users forget, then they're not sharing things anymore. So all of the commands that we do, just subscribe to the notifications that IDA creates. You basically work as normal, and all the updates are sent. So we overload the activation key, so we really only have one hotkey for the whole plugin. So if you hit F6 again once it's loaded, you get CollabREate specific things. So these are the kind of things where you're generating those messages where the plugin is communicating directly, and there's not really an IDA event notification driving those packets going across. So you can see that once you're in there, you can do their various things like fork a project. I'm about to do something crazy. I want to fork, go off on my own, and not impose my crazy changes on other people that were working on the project. You can set a checkpoint, which is a way to replay up to date. It's kind of like a poor man's undo because we can't do undo yet. And then you can manage various things and disconnect. Okay, ready to try the demo out? All right, you're going to go back to your
All right, so it is demo time, and this is DEFCON. So we realize we're taking our presentation into our own hands here and gambling. So what we'll do is I'll fire up and create a project and start making some changes. Tim will then try to come along and join the project, and you can watch his database update over here. Once I've created a project, that project will be visible to anybody who's going to attempt to join the demo on the conference wireless. So is there anybody who is actually going to attempt to do that?
Sweet.
That's great. So the pool of potential book winners is pretty narrow.
Odds are good.
If you're already connected, you've got to disconnect and reconnect to our project. And if you're created a project of your own, you're actually slave to that project. So you can't like jump projects. You're going to have to actually shut down your IDA database, create a brand new database.
You have to open the binary from scratch, right, and have it reanalyzed.
Yeah. Once you're tagged as being part of a project, there's no jumping projects unless you choose to fork one.
All right, so first things over here on the left side, we have the server menu, and it's just a command line little CLI thing. It was just easy to throw together. There's no reason this couldn't be like a web applet, or it could even have a dedicated plugin or something if we wanted to, I suppose. But the actions that are required on the server are very minimal. Another thing that we really wanted to improve upon previous collaboration projects for IDA are that the project creation is all done from the IDA side, from the client side, so to speak. So the only thing that we really have to do over on this side in order to start collaborating from the database is create users so that they can authenticate to the database. So we have an add user, we have list users. We can show you these. They're not very flashy. It's all text-based. I can scroll up. It doesn't even work very good at this resolution, but you can see we have users where permissions, and there's kind of a pseudo-graphical. You can see that for each column they have publish and subscribe and so forth. So we can list projects, we can add the users. The ones with the stars will actually send specific messages out to all connected users, so you can get stats on the current status of the projects. So we can see who's connected, from what IPs, ports, and then how many updates they send of different categories and things like that. So.
Okay, so I've got IDA up over here. I tried to jack the font up so it can be seen, but not so much that we see only 3 lines. Basically, the ground rules for trying to get the book are, once I create a project, you'll have the information you need to join. It'll be called something like DEFCON Demo.
There we go. DEFCON Demo. There goes that.
Oh, is it already there?
My IDA crashed.
Your IDA crashed?
IDA tanked.
Well, I haven't made DEFCON Demo yet, so clearly somebody made a malicious project and has owned the software already.
Well, I didn't even try and collaborate. It just tanked on its own.
Oh, okay. That's an IDA problem. Yeah. That's right. Okay. Now, to obtain the book, you're going to have to so now we have a basic wall of graffiti over here. And as you push your changes, your stuff is going to show up here. And your goal is to get something that uniquely identifies you. Your name will do. Up onto the screen. So, I'm not going to judge that, but I'm going to look at my screen here. Tim's going to look at his screen over there. And you're going to have to get something to appear that's visible here. So if I'm scrolled away from this page and you get something in an area of the database, you can try to convince me to scroll back to where you tagged it, or you can try to catch up to where I happen to be on the screen. Okay? So it's got to, we got to see it. I've got to see it. And I won't see it unless I'm actually paged to it. Okay? No goatsy, please. And that'd be pretty good if you could get that IDA comment in there. Somebody somewhere has that, I'm sure.
Hey, Chris, we have like 5 minutes left to demo.
Oh. So okay. All right. So here we go. Alt F6 brings it up. I'd been playing around, so it actually cached my server information. Chris with my very secure password.
Challenge.
Okay. If you're trying to connect and you don't immediately get a login dialog, basically it didn't find the server. Okay? So there are probably lots of projects in there already. And
Wow.
I'm going to create a new one whose name is now to be revealed. So give me a name.
Tell me what you're calling it.
What? The Demo 1 is the new project. So I'm joined. I'm scrolling away. Hopefully my database will live a while so that Tim and I can scroll around. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'll throw a comment in here.
Where are you at? Like main?
Handler. Can you get there? Okay. That doesn't count as you getting your name on the screen because I put it there for you.
Where are you? Handler? I'm like the wrong binary.
You get that?
What address are you at?
I don't know. I'll give the address away. Everybody know where I am.
That's true.
There you go. 8049700. Okay, and then the idea is that we try to capture as much state as possible.
You've updated your
What's that?
cousin.
And as Tim scrolls in, you see he's already got the comment, and that's a simple one. But we can handle a lot of different types of name changes. Okay, so Tim gets the function name change. We can go crazy, go nuts with undefines and whatnot. We can reformat. You see Tim is reformatting some operands here. So it
Much
picks
more
up.
useful.
What's that?
That's a much more useful representation.
Yeah, I mean, so it captures reformatting changes. We can get into the structures window, and as I start to create structures, Tim's already got the structure layout over there, and I can come in over here, build structures, and his window follows a change. So it really doesn't matter what part of the database you're working in. Your changes get pushed over. So there's a great billboard for somebody to try to tag something on the screen. What other types of changes? So a really kind of a nice one is that moving away from the sort of hotkey metaphor. Well, I don't have that many books for all the I's out there. So we still don't have a winner. IDC and plugins. Okay, when you generate actions in IDA using IDA's scripting language IDC or using the SDK, those things fire event notifications as well. So if one user on a project runs a script that modifies the database, all the actions that script performed get pushed out to everybody else on the project. So you can run a script, run a plugin that modifies the database somehow, and those scripts and plugins take effect across all the rest of the user. I get a bunch of people frantically trying to learn how to change the name of a structure field in IDA.
It's fun. See, we could chat.
Okay. So maybe only you and I are joined.
What happened over there?
What's that?
Your comment.
Front. I was here, front row. Well, I see the comment.
No, but look at it.
Look at what?
Yeah, somebody trashed it, but not mine.
Was it? I don't know. Is that somebody's name? What's that? Rot 13 social? Go back to the beginning of what? The database? I should go back where I was before? Maybe I will. Okay, there are bugs, so what? I don't know. Clearly, so structures was actually listed as one of the things that are busted on notifications. It's actually in your slides. You can scroll back and see that event notifications for structures are kind of broken. Okay, so this is a manifestation of that.
Hey, do you want to show a script or a?
Somebody's changing plugin names. I mean, or the structure field names. Okay, they're just choosing not to use their name. Okay. What else do we want to show?
Scripts.
Oh yeah, so scripts.
So another thing that you can do, since you're not doing specific hotkeys, you can get byte patches or whatever else an IDC script or a plugin could do. So you could actually buy an expensive plugin or whatever for one machine, and then you could use that to drive several IDA instances.
Okay, so Tim's going to go to the same address that I'm at, and you'll see I'm going to bring open IDA's scripting dialog box. Okay, go back and grab some IDC script and run the script over the database. You notice Tim knows scripting window over there, 2 different screens. So I run it. He gets all the transformations, and I can reformat it, make it a string, and we find private keys embedded in binaries, and that's kind of cool. That's a Ken Shoto binary from last year that some of you may recognize. But again, so scripting actions push, all your actions push. This is by no means, this is early beta software. So yeah, there are bugs. We're happy to hear about them. We will try to respond to them expeditiously. We're happy to hear about potential users, desired uses, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to, make myself an open target to try to give the book away. Okay, and see if are people pushing changes at all?
Oh, we've seen them.
Yeah, you're just getting busted Unicode comments or whatever that was. It's not showing up. You see mine, but I don't see yours. I have an Atlas filter on it.
Yeah. User permission.
Is anybody from the audience? What did you?
Well, there were those ones that came in, but I don't know who they were.
Yeah, I don't.
Front row on the left.
So who was pushing on? I was here front. That's
My left,
okay.
not the okay.
Front row left.
My left.
Yeah,
My
that
left.
works.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought it was your left. Yeah. So
What's that?
is this guy right
I don't know. Is he on? Who's on? You're
He's-
on.
This guy.
Okay.
He's waving. He's
I
saying
think
he's
front
doing
row
it.
left is a winner. Okay. So nice job. We're going to wrap up the loose ends on the slides real quick.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So again, this just talks about scripts and plugins. Boom, drive it with your scripts or your plugins. So you don't have to share that out. Here's my script. Run it on your database. Now they look the same. Okay, pretty easy. As I mentioned, I like it in a learning environment because you can ask everybody to join in like a read-only mode, and you can sit there kind of driving their displays to some extent from a podium or something like that, give a demonstration, and they can stay with you. And then here's some things that are on the drawing board for future work. We're hoping that the API expands to let us catch some of that pre-change notification. The better permission interface is actually kind of here. We're looking for the project migration, which is actually more or less here. It's just not incorporated yet. And again, if you're one of the people who studies these types of things, offline change merging and algorithms for doing that, we'll entertain it, but not sure how we're going to implement it. And I think that's pretty much it. There's our contact information. Again, we're happy to hear from you, and we're taking questions from now until we're booted. So. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
It's mentioned in the book. Its uses are described in the book, but it's like IDA's SDK. It's documented in the source code.
The usage. Your question was for usage, right? And the usage is actually documented by any other book that uses IDA. So this book documents the usage of the plugin very well, because you don't have to learn special commands to do anything. As you work on IDA, if you've connected to the server, all of your work is going back and forth. Anything that your version of IDA supports publish capabilities for. So that chart that we had earlier.
Yeah, all open source. We'll post it all. And again, we're happy to hear of all the potential uses and so on. Doc. GPL version 2. Okay. Any other questions?
Yep.
Alice?
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
No. Next year. Okay. All right, I think that's it. Enjoy the rest of the con.
All 2 minutes.